Welcome to another episode of the Camper Report. Today I have Kobe Ransom. You can find him on Twitter at Kobe Ransom 49GM. Very excited to be here because I'd heard a lot about him, wanted to talk some NFL with him. So how are you doing today, Kobe? And thanks for tuning in. Thanks for letting me do this show with you because it's a great honor.
Hey man, the honor is mine, and I'm just happy to be here, man. And I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Hopped on here, had a pretty good day, so we could get right back into it. So this is our main one of the day. I think breaking news a few days ago that Carson Wentz would be having surgery and he'd be out for 6 weeks of the season. So how does the Carson Wentz injury affect the AFC?
So the first thing you look at really is the division, right? And for them at the top, it's going to be the Titans and the Colts, because the Jaguars obviously are still rebuilding right now. Brand new head coach, rookie quarterback, all that good stuff. And the Houston Texans are a mess. So really is looking at the Colts and the Titans. And for right now, we know the Titans, they brought in Julio Jones and the guy AJ Brown. Then we know they have Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill. Their offense was fine last year. It's just their defense, was where they kind of had issues. They brought in Bud Dupree in the offseason. We'll see if that is enough for them to fix their defense. But even for them, I wouldn't say they're probably they're going to be in the playoffs for sure. But I don't know if they're really a contender. But for the Colts, overall, they just got to really survive somehow without Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson now too. Kind of have the same injury. Their timeline is kind of weird. They could be back by or a little after week 1, or they could be out until around midseason. So, you have no idea how long they're out, and their opening schedule is tough. They've got Seattle at home. They got the Rams at home.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, then they have to go to Tennessee. They got to go to Miami. Miami is another decent team.
Tough.
And then to Baltimore. And then they play Houston, and they play the Niners. So their first 7 weeks, if Wentz is out for all those weeks and you got Jacob Eason out there and they don't potentially make a trade for another quarterback, they could be start off with 2-5. And then at that point,
horrible.
We know with football, every week is important. It's not basketball. It's not baseball. Every game is super important. So, just for them to lose Quentin Nelson and to lose Carson Wentz so early in the season. And then you think about when Carson Wentz gets back, he's out of training camp now. So when he comes back, he's got no kind of chemistry. True. He had no reps with the ones at all. So he can come back rusty. And the offense might struggle some more when he gets back. So, their defense is really good. Now, that's one thing that they do have going for themselves. I believe they drafted Kwity Paye in the draft, so they added some more to that defensive line. So that defensive line, hopefully they can keep them in games and make things easier for that offense. But, it's going to open the door for some other wild card teams in the AFC, because they might have a rough start here, and it might even continue when Wentz gets back. Depending on when Wentz and Nelson get back, this could really hurt the opening of their season. And depending on how it goes, this could be where, a bad season starts for them.
I did not see, and we've seen Wentz, I was talking to a few days ago to another person about it. Wentz, I don't know if you remember this, but with the Eagles back in 2018, the year after the Super Bowl, he had back problems the whole year. Yeah. And he just wasn't the same. He was not good. So I did not think about the the schedule thing. And now that you bring up that hard of a schedule, they have 4 games on the road for 7 games or something?
Yeah, they got 4 of the 7 are on the road. And then they're playing the tough teams at home. They got Seattle and the Rams as their first 2 games at home. So,
yeah, and now I was thinking the Niners would lose that Colts game, but now if Carson Wentz comes back rusty, this could be a wide open, that could be another win on the Niners schedule. So, I've got to say, I mean, I guess he chose to have surgery, but it could take a significant, because they were contenders in the AFC. I mean, honestly, they were my number 2 team in the AFC. So that's interesting. Do you think they were like contenders for the AFC before he got injured?
I think you have to say they were close, at least top 3, top 4. Overall, just looking at the defense, it felt like they just were missing a little bit of quarterback. Phillip Rivers was okay last season. But just looking at the roster overall, this is a team that's ready to win now. And this is where you kind of start to think about whether they make a trade for a quarterback. You think about Jimmy Garoppolo, and you're like, hey, can they make that work? They think about Nick Foles and that Bears roster. They got Andy Dalton, they got Justin Fields, and they got Nick Foles.
That's true.
But the question is, can they make the money work somehow? Because looking at the timetable, it's hard to make a trade, because if Carson Wentz comes back and you make that trade, and Wentz is back 2 weeks later, it's like you spend capital for no reason. So they might be hesitant to really make a trade for another quarterback. But at the same time, if they throw Reason out there and they lose 3 or 4 games and Wentz still isn't ready to come back yet, it's a really tough situation for them. And seeing how they were kind of set up to have a nice season, I know it's got to be rough for them to have this start, first week of training camp. I can't hear you, buddy.
I'm muted.
There you go.
Gosh. So anyways, I think that that's a huge loss for them. They needed Carson Wentz, and what everyone isn't thinking is Jimmy Garoppolo's contract is still expensive. So like, how are they going to make that work? And that's why it's like they might trade for him, but how are you going to make that work? And that's the thing. I mean, now you're looking at Carson Wentz, who has like a $35 million deal, and Jimmy Garoppolo has a $25 million deal this year. So how are you going to make that work? I wouldn't exactly know it. So
what they could do is the Niners could pay half of that salary if they wanted to make that work, and possibly maybe ask for a higher pick from the coach and say, hey, we'll pay $13 million of this for you, but we want a 3rd round pick, in return. So could they make something work with somebody? I mean, there's different ways you can make things work in the NFL with contracts and everything that I don't know about. I'm no contract guru. There's stuff that happened like going into the season. Like the Niners, I was looking at Garoppolo's contract. I'm like, man, they got so many free agents. How are they going to get everybody back? And then they get everybody back, and it's like, okay, So the contract, they can make it work somehow. It's just a question of whether or not they want to take that risk and trade assets, and then have Carson Wentz come back maybe on time. And it's like, okay, well, what do we even do? So
he's only out 6 to 12 weeks. So the season starts when? In like 5 weeks or something like that?
Yeah, we're about a month out. Yeah. So
if he's out, like, let's say 7 weeks, he could really only miss 2 weeks of the season.
Right.
Did they have an early bye week?
I don't think it was early. I think they play 8 straight weeks. No, the other bye week is week 14, so their bye week is not early at all.
Oh, so that won't give him a break. Okay. He could be, but he could only be out the first 2 weeks. So, I mean, the worst case scenario, I think, is he's out till week 4, 5.
Worst case scenario, he's probably back for the Niner game in week 7.
Well, we'll see. It's a big thing. I hate to have him lost, because Carson Wentz is a guy that always stroked me as a hardworking guy, but he just never could stay healthy. So,
yeah, super talented. We saw his rookie year, and also we saw he was having an MVP season, the Eagles Super Bowl year. He's a big reason why that team got where they got. He won't get credit for it because Nick Foles came in and obviously won the big game, but they were fantastic because of Carson Wentz. They were the number 1 seed because of Carson Wentz. So as a talent, you've seen the throws he's make on the field. It's just that recently, after the injury, he's just making I feel like he's forcing it at times on the field. A couple of just inexplicable passes where it's like, what exactly were you thinking with that? Or he's just trying way too hard to make something happen. Some of that because the Eagles team as a whole just wasn't very good. That receiving core the last 2 years is not good at all. They missed out. JJ Arthega-Whiteside, he was not a good pick for them. They picked him pretty early, and he didn't work out. their best receiver was just this undrafted guy who's like, I forget his name. He was like 5'10", 5'11". It's just, I wish I knew his name, but yeah, their best receiver was some guy that was undrafted. So, I mean, I know they have some better talent now. They took, I'm forgetting all the names, but they took Devontae Smith this year. Last year they took, I don't know why I'm forgetting his name right now. I feel bad for forgetting his name. Yeah, Greg Ward was the name that I was thinking of. That was their best receiver the last 2 years. So let me pull the Eagles.
My brother's an Eagles fan, so right here in the chat, Greg Ward, that's why he knows that.
Yeah, but, and then last year I think he was in and out, but yeah, Jalen Reagor. That's what they drafted last year. That's what I was thinking of. So they brought in Reagor. Yeah, he just put in chat just now. They brought in Reagor. They brought in Devontae Smith, and he's hurt right now. But their receiver situation, it's just a little tough. They haven't had anybody to really rely on there. So hopefully they get it together as far as, the injuries and everything. But that's the biggest reason why Wentz was struggling, because his supporting cast wasn't very good. The running backs, I mean, I won't do it with running backs because Miles Sanders is a pretty good running back. So I think they had a good running back, but just the receivers and the offensive line at times. And then we saw Zach Ertz kind of regress a little bit. Yeah. It's just his pass catchers around him weren't very great, and it's caused him to start trying to force balls. And obviously, he was still getting nicked up here and there. So this is unfortunate to see him get hurt again. Hopefully, he can get it together. He's a fantastic talent, but he's just got to stay healthy.
And the Colts were hoping that they would resurrect him by getting him with Frank Reich, the guy who he had success with. Right. And that's what I've been saying the whole time. But hopefully they do. I mean, I'm for the guy always, but that's a serious contender that just came out of the AFC. So, yeah. Do you want to move on, or is there anything else?
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay. Were you surprised that Aaron Rodgers reported to the Packers training camp?
Some people were. I really wasn't. When it first came out, I was thinking, okay, this seems kind of crazy. Mm-hmm. But then I thought about it. The report comes out on draft day. And at that point, teams already have their draft boards kind of set, right? Like they're not really not planning their draft around getting Aaron Rodgers because no one knew he was available. Now, one question I kind of have about, the draft and Aaron Rodgers is that the Broncos passed on Justin Fields and took Patrick Surtain, at 9 when Fields was there. You kind of wonder, and in hearing that, I think they started Brett Rippon today as QB1, and that doesn't speak very well for what Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater are doing out there in Denver. So you kind of wonder if maybe they thought they can get Aaron Rodgers. There were reports early on draft day that they felt like they could get Aaron Rodgers, or they're at least calling and seeing as though they can make a deal. But that never happened. And so, but overall, I just felt like the timing wasn't right for Aaron Rodgers to get dealt, because it felt like something we'll have to do earlier in the offseason. So teams to kind of build their team around Aaron Rodgers. So I kind of always felt like he would be back at some point. And I think this was just about him trying to get some kind of say-so and some kind of control over what the Packers are doing with that team. Because over the last few years, we all know by now, it's just that pick of Jordan Love is really head-scratching, especially the fact that he wasn't even QB2 last year. Wasn't active for a single game, in his rookie year. And
who was the QB2? Dylan? No, not Dylan. Who was the QB2? Was it?
I don't even really know his name. Doyle? I think it might have been Doyle. That name sounds familiar. Let me look at their depth chart real quick. I don't know all the rosters that well, obviously.
No, I don't. I don't either. I'm just taking a wild guess. He might
have. He's not on the roster this year, so I don't know what it was. But Jordan Love couldn't even be QB2. So just that obviously taking Rodgers off, and you think like, okay, they could have potentially drafted Justin Jefferson, who we know went on to win Rookie of the Year. Well, could have been Rookie of the Year if it wasn't for Justin Herbert. They could have traded up and got Brandon Ayuk, who knows.
Imagine Devontae Adams and Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, or Devontae Adams and Brandon Ayuk. Like that would have been scary. And they just didn't, they didn't go after either. Instead, they traded back. They traded back into the first round to get Jordan Love. So it's just a head scratching thing. And then for Rodgers, I mean, to see how close they were to getting to a Super Bowl last year, and you just think, with the way they lost, because the Buccaneers defense obviously was outstanding last year. If they had someone opposite of Davante Adams,
that would
maybe they're in the Super Bowl. Maybe they
Yeah.
possibly win the Super Bowl that year. So and with all the semantics that Aaron Rodgers had, you see they finally went and got. Now I don't know how much this helps, but they went and traded for Randall Cobb. They got Cobb back in Green Bay just to kind of appease Aaron Rodgers, and now he's back. So I just thought the timing of everything, it was going to be hard for anyone else to really make a trade for him, because it's just you didn't have enough time to work and get anything together. So I knew he would be back at some point. It doesn't surprise me at all, but you can see why he did it, because the Packers weren't really moving in a direction that really helped the team to win. And I don't know if Randall Cobb is the difference maker, but for the most part, the Packers have Aaron Rodgers back, and they can have one more shot to really try to get a title out of this.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. Like, who is going to trade it with him for him? And the other thing is at least this year, the other thing is did he even have any leverage? Like, he didn't really have that much leverage if you look at it. He still was on his contract. There wasn't by the time it really became clear that he wanted to trade, the market was dried up. And so he had no leverage, and the Packers basically were like, yeah, we'll let you go next year, but this year basically you kind of is stuck with us. I don't know how you say it, but you're stuck with us this year. So that's basically, I think, was the situation. He couldn't really do that much.
Yeah, and obviously with the fines you get for holding out from camp, I mean, they weren't going to hold out. Even Deshaun Watson, with his situation, he went to camp. He reported to camp. So players aren't really going to hold out, like that when there's that much money you're going to lose, and then you lose a year of eligibility for free agency. So he was going to be back at some point, and now that he's back, obviously the Packers are going to be a contender.
Is he a free agent next year?
I don't know I know they reworked his contract. I don't know what the details are. But
okay, here I can look it up.
But he could be on the move next year potentially.
When is Aaron Rodgers? Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I just didn't feel like he was. I didn't feel like he had any leverage just because of the way. No team, like the asking price was crazy.
Just the timing. Teams already had their draft list
already, and that's what. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to say, because Niners had already traded up it was worse timing,
especially for the Niners. Because we heard that Kyle and them said that they called just to kind of see what's going on, but. You think about it, if the Niners trade obviously the 3 first-round picks and 3rd-round picks to get Trey Lance, and they trade even more to get Aaron Rodgers, that turns out to be you're trading 8-9 picks. It just seems ridiculous. So there was just no way a team could have found a way to get that done.
So
after it came out so late,
he's a free agent in 2024, so he still has 3 years left on his deal, including this year.
So I think what they did when they restructured his contract is maybe added an out for him to get out of the deal, probably next year. So we'll see. I think, and we saw the Instagram post with him and Davante Adams. They had kind of the last dance picture with MJ and Scotty. So this might be just this one last run at it for them, but I think it worked in the way that you can get.
They honestly haven't really set him up that much either this year. I mean, they got a receiver late. I think they didn't even have. They drafted
Amari Rodgers, I think, in the 3rd round. So
okay, the guy from Clemson, right? I remember that. And then they drafted a corner in the 1st. I love Eric Stokes, but I don't know if that was the right move to make. But
it just felt weird because obviously about Aaron Rodgers and he wants out, and then you're still not drafting him into receivers or anything like that. But overall, we'll see how it works out for them. We saw, Kevin King, he wasn't great in the playoffs. So maybe Eric Stokes is brought in to potentially start opposite of Jair Alexander. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I really they've been mistreating him. I mean, I that's an interesting situation that we can dive into more, but basically the Packers are they definitely didn't do it because Jordan Love was not. If you're going to get a quarterback, why didn't you just like wait for a little while? Because Jordan Love was not the guy. I could see that a mile away.
So yeah, I mean, it was really just super premature. That's just the only way to really put it. Considering that Rodgers was still under contract until 2023, and it's 2019, you just went 13-3 and lost in the NFC Championship game to the Niners, and the move you make is drafting Jordan Love when you could be making a move to help you contend now. It's felt so backwards. Like, you have Aaron Rodgers and you're contending. Why aren't you doing more to help this team reach that next level? I mean, and you can't really blame Aaron Rodgers because at that point you're like, listen, I don't have, I'm not Tom Brady. I can't just play till I'm like 48. Like, give me some help so I can try to win some rings now. And they've fallen short so many times. Just every year it's like it's a disappointing playoff exit for them, like almost every year. And at some point it's just you think they changed the way they're doing something, but they just haven't. So
yeah,
I mean, Ross is fed up, and he had good reason to be.
Yep, that's a good idea. It's a sticky situation. So, do you have anything else to share on that, or should we get to our third?
We can get to our third.
Okay, so how did you get to starting a podcast? I was interested because I'm a big fan of yours and Niner Wires podcast. So,
it's funny. So I wasn't even really ever considering doing podcasting at all. I always talked about sports with like, friends and family and just get kind of on Twitter, here and there. But it wasn't until the pandemic and we're all stuck in our houses and we're all just on the internet all day long. And it's just, we all know about 2020. It was just a really, really odd, really weird year. But the one thing that came out of it was I saw someone start a podcast, and I saw them start it with the Anchor app, which is free. It's kind of partnered with Spotify, and you can just record from your phone if you need to, and it's just really simple to use. And I was like, you know what? I like talking about the Niners. Let me see if I can get some buddies, and we can just kind of just talk on the podcast and just put some stuff out. And just instead of talking, instead of typing on Twitter, just talking to a mic, and get our opinions out there verbally. So we did that. I started with 3 other people. We called it the Faithful 4 podcast. And that's where it really started. And we did that throughout the entire season. Unfortunately, the season kind of sucked for the Niners that year because of injuries and everything. But the thing that came out of it was that, I kind of realized that, hey, I kind of like this podcasting thing. I kind of like, interacting with people and talking and just the whole thing. And then obviously that leads to me making the Talking Niners podcast because I kind of wanted to just, talk more. And so I kind of had 2 going on. Then I brought in, Niner Wire Sam later. And then now I write for Goldmine as well. So really just kind of getting full-fledged into just the whole sports analyst, sports content kind of thing. But yeah, just the pandemic, just being bored, just kind of being on the internet a lot. And I was like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and start a podcast. And fortunately, I've enjoyed doing it. So that's how I got started. And that's why I'm still doing it.
So I wanted, because I'm with Buzzsprout. Does Anchor give you more free hours? Does it give you any free hours at least?
So Anchor is completely free. So they give you record within the app. You get 30-minute segments to record, but you can put it together and everything. And also, if you get, I think they have sponsors on there too. So if you get like enough views, you can possibly get some sponsors, make a little money. It's not a whole lot. But I mean, Anchor is a really good, because it's just completely free. There's other podcasting services that you have to pay for to get a certain amount of time. You're going to upload a certain amount of, hours per month or whatever. But with Anchor, I don't think there are any limits, not that I know of. We talked a lot, and we didn't really get limited at all. So Anchor is really good.
Yeah. So yeah, that's cool. Are you still on there? Just wondering. I mean,
no, because I joined the podcast community, the Blue Wire Hustle. It cost me $15 to be in there, but that's where I'm at now. They kind of offer you some more, I guess, what's the word? I guess they give you some more options. I guess that's the word to say. Just some more tools to kind of help grow your pod and everything, and give you some and give you some pointers on how to expand and grow. And that's so I'm in that community. But
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was just wondering because I'm looking I like Buzzsprout, but I'm trying to look if there's any more free hours on other sites. So
yeah, so Anchor, I think Anchor is probably the best bet. I think I probably would go to Anchor.
Okay, well, nice. Just trying to ask that question, but we'll get to the next one. Are the 49ers learning this is one that I came up with kind of, and I was interested because I was talking to my brothers and they were like, your organization is so good. The Eagles, they've really screwed it up the last 2 years or whatever. So
yeah,
it was funny. Are the 49ers learning from their mistakes? And is it good that most of the decisions are up to the general manager and the head coach?
So the 49ers have most definitely learned from their mistakes. And luckily, because of their 2019 season, they've been given the opportunity to. Because obviously, you think about it long term, they only have one winning season in 3 years. And most of the time when that's the case, most of the time you're out of the door. But when your brain trust is John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, obviously you give them a little bit more leeway. So obviously, let's go back to 2017. And we know this roster isn't great, and you're going to be rebuilding. So, we know a lot of players are out the door. Colin Kaepernick is gone, all that good stuff. And then you have the second pick in the draft. And you have the opportunity to draft Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes. And you pass an opportunity to take Solomon Thomas, who is no longer with the team. He's now on the Raiders. And you trade back into the first round to draft a guy with, character issues and Reuben Foster. And what happens? He has character issues and he's off the team.
He was a great player, but
he was great. But I mean, the red flags were there in the draft and they took the chance and it didn't work out. So since then, the Solomon Thomas thing that he went to Stanford and John Lynch, is a graduate from Stanford. And actually, he was still taking classes at Stanford and he took classes with Solomon Thomas. So could you potentially think that some personal kind of emotional attachments caused him to draft Solomon Thomas?
Yeah.
Potentially, because they were both at Stanford together, taking classes. So John Lynch kind of allowed his emotions to get attached to the process and drafted Solomon Thomas 3. I think people saw it coming at the same time as like obviously I didn't know as much as I knew as I know now back then, but I was like, okay, who even is Solomon Thomas? Why are we taking a quarterback here? And so that's the first pick, and you're thinking, okay, he's an interior defensive lineman, and then they don't play him on the interior. They try to make him an edge rusher. And that wasn't his game at Stanford, and as you see in the NFL, it never worked out.
Didn't he play at North Carolina for a little while too? Did he transfer?
He may have. From my knowledge, I thought he was at Stanford the majority of his career.
Hold on. Solomon Thomas College.
It may have just been Stanford. Maybe he did go to North Carolina. I'm not sure.
Hold on. I'm trying to. He was from. Okay, well, it won't tell me. He was born in Chicago, but it doesn't tell me which college. Well, I thought he was from North Carolina kid. I thought he came from North Carolina, the college.
So he doesn't have any logs for his freshman year, so maybe he did transfer from somewhere else. But yeah, his 2 years that are logged on Sports Reference is 2 years at Stanford. So
okay.
But yeah, so you think about that, and then you go into 2018, and you kind of luckily the Niners also got George Kittle out of that draft, so they kind of got lucky and got a superstar out of it. But also, you think of the pick that Shanahan had another personal pick, Joe Williams. Never played a snap in the NFL. A guy who, had he was out of football for a little bit, but obviously, backs are tough. There's a lot of good running backs who come out of nowhere, but they took a chance on Joe Williams, the guy who was out of football, came back into football. They gave him a chance and it never worked out. So, off the bat, you have 3 guys in that 2017 draft who were kind of a waste of a pick. Not to mention CJ Beathard. So you don't draft Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, but you trade up to the 3rd round to draft CJ Beathard because you ran the pro system in college. So obviously you kind of see that the emotional attachments, the personal preferences kind of get in the way in that first draft. So the second draft, you get Mike McGlinchey because you need to get somebody to tackle. And he's been solid. Before top 10 pick, is he as good as maybe you would have hoped? Maybe not.
No.
He's got some weaknesses in pass protection. We'll see if maybe that he fixes that this year. He's a great run blocker, though.
Yeah.
But obviously, for a top 10 pick, you kind of hope for a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then you have Dante Pettis, the receiver. In the Niners, likely the year prior, that you got Kendrick Bourne, undrafted free agency, turned out to be solid. But then you get Dante Pettis, and as good as he looked his rookie year, it just never really clicked after that.
That's true.
Second round pick, once again, traded up for him, and it just never pans out. He just ends up stop getting snaps altogether, and he, even as a punt returner, couldn't even get reps there. And he's one of the best punt returners ever in college. So, and it's funny because Shanahan obviously doesn't like to play physical, like to play tough, and Pettis wasn't really of that kind of mold. So now it's like Shanahan's trying to get somebody who is not really, in his kind of style or preference, but at the same time, he's wrong again on that pick. So, but then again, they get one gem, Fred Warner, obviously one of the best linebackers in football now. So that kind of saves that draft a little bit.
Yeah.
So now we got 2019 coming, and this one's the gimme because obviously about Jimmy Garoppolo, his injury. Although unfortunate in that year, in 2018, also Jimmy G kind of saved 2017 as well, because that season was down the gutter. Like they were 1-10 until Jimmy played, and then they won 5 games, and it's like, okay, maybe it wasn't so bad. Then 2018, he tears the ACL, and then you have a high pick again. But you get Nick Bosa out of this, and that's Nick Bosa is the gimme, right? Like you're looking at Nick Bosa, and you're like, okay, I mean that's your draft thing. It's not hard. Anyone with the number 2 pick would have drafted him. He might have went number 1 if the Cardinals didn't hire Cliff Kingsbury and he wanted Kyler Murray over Josh Rosen. So that happens. And you get Bosa and then you get Debo. And that's really your 2 big guys. And then you get Greenlaw as well in that 2019 draft. And that's another guy who played a big part.
That was a good draft. That was probably the best draft we had for years.
Yeah, 2019 was the draft where you had 3 rookies contribute highly, and you get to Super Bowl. And that's where they're kind of starting to figure it out. They kind of hit on the majority of those picks. Obviously, they didn't have as many picks as they had in prior drafts, but they finally get something. They finally hit big on the draft. You get a superstar in Nick Bosa, you get a star in Debo, and you get a solid linebacker in Trey Greenlaw, and that kind of helps you get to helps. They play a big role in getting to the Super Bowl. And then 2020, that year is almost kind of a toss because it's just how crazy it was with all the injuries and everything. But obviously, they go in and get a guy they really like in Brandon Ayuk. And with Ayuk, it almost feels like the redemption of it. Ayuk feels like what I think Shanahan thought Dante Pettis could be. Excellent, elusive route runner with great hands. And for Dante, but Ayuk, obviously, a little more of a physical player than Dante Pettis was. And finally, they hit on that. And obviously, with Javon Kinlaw, it's still kind of wait and see. We know they traded away to Forrest Buckner to get that pick. So, I mean, we'll see what Kinlaw. Hopefully, this year is an improvement. I think some people may question keeping Armstead over Buckner if Kinlaw doesn't work out. But if he does, Niners like geniuses. So hopefully Kinlaw works out for the Niners. But really, that's really the only 2 picks that are really important because they traded away most of those picks. Remember, they got Emmanuel Sanders in the season. Yeah. Traded away their 3rd and their 4th. So you didn't have that. And then you get your next picks in the 5th round, and you get Colton McKivitz, and he's just a 5th-round lineman. What do you really expect? And so then it leads to this year. And this year is really where
they start to catch up.
This is for me where the Niners really went, just it was like, man, they really did that. It's just there's a lot of man, they really did that. Starting with the quarterback thing, you're thinking they trade up, and you're like, okay, we're going to get a crazy good quarterback here. And then you hear all this Mac Jones, and it's like, there's no way Shanahan is still stuck in his ways, right? There's no way that he still admires the Kirk Cousins style quarterback. And luckily for us, he didn't. Luckily, Trey Lance was likely just the best prospect that Shanahan had ever seen, and he turns out being the guy. I think another thing they do outside of just the ordinary is they draft the offensive lineman 2nd round. And you think, okay, normally the Niners like to get defensive guys because they like to build that defensive line. You're thinking maybe they add some more edge depth because at the time you're thinking, D Ford is still hurt. Ebukam is okay pass rusher, but he doesn't rush a lot. Never really put up big numbers. You're thinking maybe you need some depth there. And then you have Bosa come off an injury. So you're thinking, okay, they got to get edge or they got to get corner. And we see corner right now is kind of a concern. But they get offensive linemen, and they hadn't really drafted offensive linemen high since McGlinchey, and that was the one time, but that's because it's a top 10 pick, and you got to get somebody at tackle because you traded away Trent Brown.
True.
So that kind of surprises you a little bit. And then you're thinking, okay, receiver. Got to be a receiver. Because obviously Kendrick Bourne's out the door.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurd's been hurt a lot. Who else can you really trust? And they don't draft receiver. Instead, they draft corner in the third round. It's like, okay.
I was really rooting for them to get a corner in the second, lineman in the third. I wasn't getting the running back. I thought Wayne Gallman was the number 2.
Right. That was another one that surprised you is running back. That was the first third round pick. It's like, wait, running back? When you have Raheem Mostert and you have Jeff Wilson and you have guys that it doesn't matter who plays back there. Normally they produce pretty well.
The sneaky, surprising one was also the 6th round pick. I did not expect them to get it. I thought they were getting receiver. I was like, to top it all off, we're getting receiver. I liked the draft, actually. I think I could understand all the moves that the Niners did. I could understand absolutely all of them, but there was the order of them was a little bit weird.
It was unpredictable. Right? It was outside of the norm for the Niners. You think you kind of have their kind of style down, like, okay, they're going to draft this, they're going to draft that. And it's like, okay, it's just surprises everywhere. And so I think that's because they have really, because the fact of the matter is that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch were both rookies coming in. They were rookie GM, rookie head coach. And, same with players, you got a lot to learn. And with every year that goes by, you gain experience, you learn from your mistakes, all that good stuff. So I think, as time went on, they definitely have learned. And the biggest, example of that is the fact that they drafted Trey Lance and not Mac Jones. That's like the one thing that you can point to is like, okay, yeah, they learned. Because in 2017, they passed on Deshaun Watson, they passed on Patrick Mahomes, and they drafted CJ Beathard in the 3rd round. And it's like,
right,
what is that? And then, now this time, they draft Trey Lance in the 1st round. They trade up to get him. They're not patient. We didn't think they made the blockbuster trade. They never made a blockbuster trade. It never made a trade where you give up multiple 1st-round picks. We didn't think they'd do that either. But, what do you know? They trade up, and they get probably one of the best prospects you could have got out of that draft in Trey Lance. So they've learned, and about whether, it's good for your GM and your head coach to make the decisions. I mean, obviously, your GM is hired to make decisions, but I think it is, if you have a good head coach, I think it is important to let them pick their guys, because obviously you're the ones that's coaching them. They're the ones that are going to put them in on game days. Now, obviously, the GM, I think, is good to have a guy who can kind of, when your head coach is maybe getting, just suggesting something that doesn't sound too right, or just really just kind of to help keep things, on track. I think it's what the GM it's really good for. But I think now in the league, today, it's really good to help coaches get the guys they want. Because at the end of the day, the GM is in the office and the coach is on the field with the players. So you want guys that the coach wants. And I think they're getting better at that. Obviously, we're seeing they're getting better at that. I think John Lynch and Kyle make a good tandem. I think they work good together. And I think the Niners are in a good spot. I think for Jed York to get that right after the last 2 years of
coaches.
Chip Kelly, and then you have Jim Tomsula after, really fumbling the Jim Harbaugh situation and keeping Trent Baalke over Jim Harbaugh when Harbaugh was the reason that franchise turned it around a bit. I think, they made the good choice at head coach and GM, and we're seeing it. They're starting to really get into their groove. And this team, hopefully this is the year where they start to rattle off playoff season after playoff season after playoff season, and really are able to maintain consistency and be good for a long time.
I agree. I think this is an intro because we, like you said, all these draft mistakes, but I think this year they finally started to realize it's almost like they finally started to, the hot seat finally started to heat up for them. And they finally started to realize this is a win now. We need to you can't just expect to win now without putting the right pieces in place. And so I think they really wanted, they realized that they needed to go. They needed to get going with their drafting right and all that. And they're finally making good personnel decisions. And I think Jed York, I mean, we've seen what happened when Jed York has been the guy making the decisions. It's a disaster. So I think it's a good thing. And I mean, going back to, the Eagles, for example, the reason why they picked the reason why Howie Roseman is still around is because he is the the owner's friend. So he should have been fired, I don't know, 2 years ago, but he's still around because of that. So I think the Niners are slowly learning for sure from their mistakes, but it's good that they're finally kind of starting to add the numbers of right towards the numbers of wrong. So I'm glad with what we did this draft. I would have liked to see us draft a receiver slightly earlier, but obviously we think we can work it out. And like you said, in 27, I mean, there was all these bad picks, but I think they're finally starting to realize, okay, all of these picks were those picks that we made earlier on were stuff that will get us fired very quickly. So
yeah, we have a lot less head scratches now. It's not like you pick a player and it's like, okay, what were they thinking with this? We don't see that anymore.
Yeah, true. So are we good to do the next one, predicting the wild card teams in the NFC and AFC?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, sure. So do you want to split them? Do you want to do the NFC, AFC? I mean, I could do the AFC. I don't care.
I think I'll do the NFC. It's tough to predict this kind of thing, right? But I guess I just kind of named some teams that are likely going to be in that wild card race. Obviously, now with there being 3 spots, you have more teams. Number 1, everyone in the NFC West is going to be contending. Everyone.
That's true.
The NFC West is absolutely stacked. The Cardinals got to get it together this year, I feel like. And obviously, with 3 teams being able to go in the wild card, every team from the NFC West can make it, as long as they're obviously playing, at their, the top of their level. So I think everyone in the NFC West is contending, and then you have the NFC South. I mean, I think the Saints, it's really hard to see where they're going to be because it really depends on the quarterback play. And they're not going to have Michael Thomas essentially all year. I think he's supposed to be out for 16 weeks with that ankle surgery. So he might not be back until late in the year.
Oh, I forgot about the Michael Thomas injury. That's a huge loss.
And so the Falcons, they got a new coach in Arthur Smith. Will they turn around after, just blowing so many leads? They were in games, the Falcons, for last year, but, a couple of wins here and there, maybe their season's way different. So, how far back are they? Julio Jones is gone, but Kyle Pitts is in. Is the offense still going to be as good? Can the defense turn around? They'll be interesting. The Panthers, now with Sam Darnold, Matt Rule's second year, now with the supporting cast they have around, is Darnold really the answer? Was he bad in the Jets because of Adam Gase, or is he just bad because he's bad? We're going to find that out this year. They're kind of an ant team. With the NFC North, the Vikings, if they can get their quarterbacks off the COVID list, I think they're a team that might rebound. Obviously, they started contending late in the year, but I think they're a team that, obviously, on offense, you got Kirk Cousins, you got Dalvin Cook, you got Adam Thielen, you got Justin Jefferson. I think they're good enough on offense. Their defense is still pretty solid. They're going to be a team that's probably in the wild card hunt. The Packers, we know, is going to be probably a contender. Detroit's probably going to be terrible. I think Detroit's probably going to suck.
I think Detroit's going to be pretty bad too. Going back real quick to your point with the Saints, do you think, now with this injury, I forgot about that, do you think the Saints even make the playoffs? I don't think so.
There's a good chance they could miss it. We're about to find out just how good, Breeze was for them. But then again, later in their career, at least later in Breeze's career, he was not really taking many shots down the field. He was efficient. He was completing about 70% of his passes. But every time I watch the Saints game, it's like he's not pushing the ball down the field, So that's really why Michael Thomas became, just a slant man, because that's really all Drew Brees really threw was curls and slants and screens to Alvin Kamara. Now, we know that Jameis Winston can air it out. Taysom Hill, right. I mean, I don't really know. Taysom Hill really annoys me. He's like a player who is good, but he really shouldn't be good. You don't know why he ever makes an impact, but for some reason he does. Jameis Winston should be the starting quarterback. They brought in, who did they draft? Was it Ian Book? I want to say.
Ian Book. It was.
Yeah. I mean, Ian Book was okay at Notre Dame. I don't think he was great. So I mean,
Yeah.
he'll probably be quarterback 3. But I mean, it
3.
really depends on how Winston plays. We had that 30 for 30 season where he threw 30 touchdowns and 30 picks. So, and we know
Yeah.
he likes to throw the ball downfield, but he takes a lot of chances. But do they have the receivers with Michael Thomas out to really have an effective passing game? And can Winston cut down on the turnovers? Well, I think, with Sean Payton and Jameis Winston, they might be able to move the ball. I mean, we'll see. But it's going to be a team that's hard to gauge. This is the first time you're just not really sure about them because obviously no Drew Brees. You don't know what to expect from their quarterback position. So, I mean, they could miss the playoffs, but they could also make it as a wild card. I think this is kind of like on the fringe. With acting NFC North, yeah, Detroit's going to suck. Chicago, they're a team with a good defense, but their offense is when does Justin Fields start? That's kind of what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
And their offense, because Andy Dalton, he's a solid guy, but he's almost kind of with Nick Foles was last year, where it's like, okay, he's solid, but he's not going to make you a playoff team anymore. We know, he's had a couple of good years with Cincinnati, but I think those are behind him. We saw that Dallas team last year; they couldn't really get to, they had so many chances to win that division, they just couldn't really get it together. And Dalton played the majority of the end of that season. He missed some time towards the end with the thumb injury, but I mean, Dalton, he's solid, but at the same time, it's like he's not a guy you're really scared of. So for them, I think they're 8-8 last year. I think they'll hover around, 500. Obviously, you can't finish 500 anymore because of 17 games, but I think they'll hover around 8-9 wins. The East is interesting. Well, I guess not really. The Giants, I don't know. Do they finally,
this is Daniel Jones. This is Daniel Jones' proven year. He has to do good this year.
Daniel Jones has to prove that he can be a franchise quarterback this year because it's year 3, and the first 2 years have not been great. Not really much to be excited for from that.
I mean, they picked up 2 great receivers. So Kenny Golladay and the guy in the draft, Kadarius Toney.
Kadarius Toney. From Florida. So, I mean, they got him some playmakers. Can he make the most of it? We know Evan Ingram was a Pro Bowler last year. They're getting Saquon Barkley back. The offense, I think he's going to have his weapons to try to get something done. He's got to show something this year. This year is the year for him. Washington, it's really just the quarterback. What's Fitzpatrick are you getting? Because Fitzpatrick, he has his moments where he's been really good, but he also has had times where he's not that great. But Washington's defense is incredible.
I like Taylor Heineke.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Heineke wins that battle. I mean, we'll see. They're brought in Fitzpatrick, so I'm assuming he'll be the guy to start, initially. But Washington was a team that I thought would trade for Jimmy, maybe, because that seems like a team that Jimmy Garoppolo could be good on. A team with a good defense. They got good weapons. They brought in Curtis Samuel, or did they? Was it the?
It was Curtis Samuel. Yeah.
Yeah, they have I'm forgetting his name. He's one of the better young receivers in the league.
Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, McLaurin. Yep. And then they drafted De'Ami Brown also in the draft. So they've got some weapons. And then you have that great defense. I think that's a team where I felt like if Fitzpatrick wasn't impressing, that maybe they would give the Niners a call about Garoppolo. Just because of where they are as a team. I think Garoppolo would be good on that team. But they're a team with that defense. I expect them to be pretty good. But their ceiling is really just depending on how their quarterback play is. Because that defense, we saw how good the Buccaneers were and with their defense. And really, Tom Brady was really just efficient. And obviously, all the weapons he had around him. I don't want to sound like a hater, but
I'm a hater of Tom Brady, too. I do not like him.
But I feel like in the playoffs, he wasn't as great as they made it sound. I mean, he really should have lost that Packers game. He had 3 interceptions in that championship game. The Packers just couldn't score. And then he's really just efficient in the Super Bowl. But the defense, I mean, Mahomes and the offense couldn't do anything.
And also Mahomes was like, I think was it the center starting at left tackle or something like that? They had something.
They were without both their tackles. Their offensive line was a mess because they were without both their tackles.
Yeah.
So, I mean, overall, it sounds like a hater, but I don't think he was all. I don't think he was.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't. And like like you said in the Packers game, the Packers, like, I was watching that game. I was like, okay, maybe they're gonna score now, or now, and then just like 5 drives and they haven't scored. I'm like, what? Like, it was crazy.
Yeah. So Washington could be, just a team that this could be their breakout year, or this could be a year where it's like if only they had a quarterback,
Yeah.
And but I think they'll be a playoff team. They were a playoff team last year. I think obviously Fitzpatrick is better than what Alex Smith was last year. Alex Smith, it was great to see him get to play football again, but he wasn't great last year. He wasn't really doing anything fantastic for them, and Dwayne Haskins was a big failure for them. But yeah, and then the Eagles, they're kind of a mess. It's hard to really predict with them, but I think they're going to be bad this year. And then Dallas, the Cowboys.
Dallas has a high ceiling.
Your team always looks good on paper. Always looks good on paper.
Oh,
they got Dak
but their
back.
coach.
Yeah, CeeDee Lamb, second year. Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, excellent receiving core. You got Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, in the defense, they're talented, but they always underachieve. Because this year they finally achieved to where their talent is at. I mean, there's just a team that they got all the talent to be great, but will they? Will they finally break through? And it's just hard to gauge. I think they'll be a playoff team for sure, but will they be a contender? Once again, probably not. So just for the NFC, I think there's not too many terrible teams in the NFC, but there's also a lot of teams that have their seasons fall apart quickly, and some other teams that need some things to break right to really make the wild card. But NFC is tough. NFC is tough.
Yeah. I think the Eagles, it just depends on it depends on a lot of things. Is Jalen Hurts, can Nick Sirianni turn the culture of the team? Obviously, he was Frank Reich's disciple for a little while, was for the Chiefs back in 2012 or something like that as like a QB coach, or I can't remember. But so, I mean, it's really just, can he turn it around? Can Jalen Hurts be what they want him to be? I don't think he is. I think he'll probably be pretty good. Obviously, he was basically, what I always say is Jalen Hurts was always thrown into the fire. Like Jalen Hurts last year, anything out of him was good because he was thrown into the fire where anything would have been great. It was poor QB competition. And so I feel like he just was like, go out there. They said, go out there and perform. Can he take the next step this year as a second-year guy? I am not sure. That's the biggest key to their team. If he can't, then I think they finish off 7-10, probably. So
I wonder what they think of Hurts, because last year, obviously, just drafting him at all was like, okay, they don't believe in Carson Wentz. They must not, because they took him what was it, second round, third round, something like that. So I mean, that pick is just kind of like, okay, they don't think that Wentz can stay healthy, and then Hurts gets a chance to play because Wentz is out, and you see in that what was the second to last game or the last game, but they just take him out of the game after the first half for no reason, and they just toss Nate Sudfeld in there, who is now a Niner, 49ers legend, but they just throw Sudfeld out there in the second half, and it's like, what is happening here? What is Doug Peterson doing? Do they not like Jalen Hurts? Did they take him out because he wasn't playing well? Were they trying to lose that game on purpose? I don't know what they think of Jalen Hurts. Second year now. Obviously, we know he's an excellent runner. We saw that at Alabama. We saw it at Oklahoma. As a thrower, is he, good enough? And that's kind of where it lies. I don't know. He's a big question mark. You just don't really know what his ceiling is. And like you said, his play at quarterback will, determine how their season goes. But I honestly don't know how much they even believe in him.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I like the Redskins. The one thing that it's like, Taylor Heineke, he showed flashes in the playoffs, and with the Bucks, I mean, with the Packers, well, hold on. Yeah, with the Bucks, Tom Brady didn't play too well. I mean, even in that Washington game, he kind of looked like Ben Roethlisberger. Like the Washington Redskins were like kind of. I mean, the Washington Redskins were doing the same thing they did with Ben Roethlisberger. They were basically just getting him a lot of pressure. They were taking complete advantage of his weakness, just not mobile. And so, no, I mean, the Washington Redskins could be a really, really, really good team this year, but I think they really, I don't know if, I guess they didn't have the high enough pick to draft a quarterback, because by the time their pick there wasn't any good quarterbacks around. They could have gotten Kyle Trask. But I mean, I think next year, I think for them, it's just like next year, see what you got out of the team and then draft a quarterback or try to draft a quarterback, trade up, draft a quarterback, because I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is always getting older. Taylor Heineke, I mean, he could be a career backup. So
I think he's
for
a
them
guy
right now,
who,
I think it's a testing.
I think Heineke is a guy who, like, it's just the one game, you know, and he looks amazing. It's like, oh, Heineke might have more to him than we think, but I think it's like a Blaine Gabbert thing. You remember Blaine Gabbert with the Niners? Yeah, a couple of times we're like, okay, Blaine Gabbert's not terrible.
I remember
and
him.
And then you have a couple of games like, okay, Blaine Gabbert's terrible. You know, I think with Heineke, I think if he plays more than he did obviously last year, I think that's where you kind of like, okay, maybe he's not as good as we thought he was.
Yeah, and we really only saw him in a few games. So was it like 2 games?
Yeah, it wasn't anything. I mean, it's just because Smith couldn't play, so they kind of had to toss him out there.
Leg stuff,
he was behind Alex Smith, who couldn't really throw the ball deep at all. So I mean, it's obviously wasn't better than Alex Smith.
I'm not sure who the Redskins got in the draft. I mean, their O-line, that's an intriguing team. Their O-line was definitely, I'm not sure.
Let me pull up real quick. I know they had a good draft. Washington's a really interesting team.
They are.
Because it could be great, man. They could be great, but it's just about, you know, they got Jamin Davis at linebacker. They brought in Samuel Cosme at tackle. Benjamin St. Juice, the cornerback, who I liked and during the process of the draft.
Oh, Cosme at tackle. That's a good pick. I like him.
Yeah. And then De'Ami Brown, obviously talked about him at receiver.
Yeah.
They got Shaka Toney in the 7th round. It's a guy from Penn State. He was pretty nice in college. We'll see if maybe he's a late value pick, can act as some depth for them. You know, their defense is going to be really good. That defensive line, the defensive front is not as good as the Niners was in 2019.
It's really good.
Especially if Chase Young takes that step in his second year. You know, it's just, it really comes back down to quarterback. If they had a better quarterback, I think you would think of them differently. You probably have them a little bit higher with the contenders, but they're definitely a playoff team, at least looking at it from before the season starts.
It's funny that like we have a friend that is named Jonathan Allen also, and there's a guy on the Redskins named Jonathan Allen. It's pretty funny. But you know, we always joke, we're like, whoa, he's in disguise as a very famous football player. It's pretty funny. But so I'll get to my AFC. This is a team that I actually I really was intrigued by. The first one I got to do the Browns. I think the Ravens are a better team than them, like with the addition of Justin Houston and everything else. But the Browns, I mean, they could really pull it together defensively, offensively. There's some question marks there, but with the run game, the duo of the backs that they have, the Browns could be a really good team. Really, the Browns, between the Browns and the Ravens, it's really close, but I think the Browns end up as a 5th seed. My 6th seed is the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins should have been in the playoffs last year. I mean, this year is Tua's year. I mean, no doubt about it. This year is where Tua is going to break out. Wait, did we lose him? Did we lose you? Kobe? Okay, well, I think we might have lost him. So this year is a year where, you're back. Okay, you first froze.
All right, I'm back.
Yeah, so this year is where the Dolphins could break out. I mean, Tua, I don't think he's that good, but I mean, they picked up Will Fuller. They got the guy in the draft. What's his name? The 6th pick.
Waddle.
They got Waddle. So they have now 3 really good receivers plus that really interesting, running. They have a good tight end. And then their defense was solid last year, and they barely missed out of the playoffs, and they definitely got better this year. They got that defensive lineman later on in the draft in the first round.
They could have made the playoffs, so they didn't mess around with the Tua and Fitzpatrick thing. Yeah, they would play Tua because Fitzpatrick was playing good enough for them to win games, and then they put Tua in, and then Tua wasn't good enough to take him back out and put Fitzpatrick back in. It was just a roll. It was just a carousel, and it was just a mess. And they could have made the playoffs. So they weren't messing around with that.
And I mean, Tua is now he's been here for more than a year. He's going to be the number 1 guy. They have a good backup option with Jacoby Brissett. I'm not sure what you think most of him, but I think he's a good backup. And
Yeah,
then, yeah, he's pretty solid. And so they also got a D lineman. I can't remember his name at the time right now, but I think they got him late in the first. He was good. So they got better on defense and offense. I think they're the 6th seed. And then 7th seed, I'm actually I'm going to say that the Steelers do not make the playoffs. I think that the Chargers will make the playoffs. I think I don't know what you say about that, but I think that I love Justin Herbert. I think they're primed for another good year.
I mean, we'll see with Brandon Staley. Obviously, making that coaching change there. We know Brandon Staley was coordinator of the #1 defense in the league last year with the Rams. So, I mean, yeah, if they turn that defense around and they keep their offensive efficiency, Herbert takes a leap, yeah, I think they're a team that can make the playoffs for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I just have something with the Steelers, I mean, they got a good running back, but Ben Roethlisberger's second half of the year drops off. And are they really going to the only thing that saved them, I think, last year, I don't know if you agree with this, was the 11-0 start. Are they really going to start that easy?
Yeah, they went 11-0, finished 11-5?
Yeah.
Or something
so they
like
lost
that.
the last 5 games.
So, I mean, yeah, it does feel like you kind of questioned about Roethlisberger and just how much longer can he do it? Because he started the year pretty fine, and then towards the end of the year, it's okay, he's kind of falling off a little bit here.
Yeah. And the AFC is so
I don't know what's longer.
Too.
And he was contemplating retirement, during the offseason, and he just comes back. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I guess we'll see. I mean, offensively, they got the talent all over the place. That defense should be very good. I mean, I still think they're going to be one of the better teams in the AFC. Mm-hmm. It's just hard.
But also, their division is very good. So, did we lose him again? Okay. Well, anyways, the Steelers division is good. I think that you've got a few really, really, really good, really good teams in that division. So he's back again. But yeah, that's what I got to say on the Steelers. I don't think they're that good team. Their defense is definitely really good, but I don't know. Their offense could be the downfall.
I think they'll be fine. But it really depends on Big Ben.
Yeah, it does. It does, for sure. So, I mean, that's basically all we have for today. But it's been so good talking with you, Kobe. I hope you guys enjoyed this show, Hot Takes with Kobe, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, man, I had a great time.
Yeah,
love talking about football.
Yeah, so we will see you guys later. I'll probably be doing a weekend show on the NBA. There's been a lot of news happening. I'm a Lakers fan, so extra exciting.
Oh boy.
Hey, I'm not a bandwagoner. I actually have liked them.
No, I didn't say anything. But I mean, that team,
I liked them when they went 6-66, 16-66.
Oh,
I like them since those 2016 year, I think it was. They were pretty bad.
Oh yeah, the Lakers were bad. They were pretty bad until LeBron showed up. But
yeah. So I like them.
The Lakers offseason has been crazy. I don't know how they made all that work, but that roster is loaded.
It is. So we will see you guys later. Thanks for tuning in, and peace out.